Darby Heights. Some places never change.
Hello and welcome to the Andyplex. I'm your host, Andy Majorano. This is episode 18, the Last Call podcast. Have an extraordinary honor to interview, hailing from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is kind of my alma mater. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. It's very close. Paolo Pilladi, who just released a feature independent film called Last Call. And I just got to watch it. Hilarious, amazing, huge cast. And here we go. Welcome, Paolo.
How are you?
I'm great, Andy. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, carving out some time. I know you're a busy man. And I just watched your film, Last Call, which dropped in March of this year, correct?
Yeah, March 19th. Yep.
Cool. So I really want to talk about your journey, but this movie is ringing in my ears. I loved it. It was so close to home, literally and figuratively for me. The vibe is so personal. I could just tell. I know you're from Philly. So why don't we talk about growing up in Philly and some of the trappings that went into making this movie? And I know it was a passion project from the heart because you're from Philly and it's such a Philly piece. So walk us through growing up in Philly and the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised, me and Will Smith and
yes,
two others,
Fresh Prince.
Others. Great, the Roots, a lot of people, but yes. Grew up in West Philadelphia, and a child of the 80s. And as you can imagine in neighborhoods like West Philly and all over, especially cities in the Northeast, very much so, immigrant enclaves and working class neighborhoods. And that's the world I come from. Mine in particular was predominantly Italian-American, African-American, and Jewish-American, and lower middle class, I would say, working class. And from a storytelling perspective, and also from a work ethic perspective, it was, it's the only thing I know. And so when this project kind of came to be, I was, I fell in love with that because most of the stories I gravitate towards have a strong working class element to them. This a lot different with with comedy and with the type of comedy it was. And I typically do drama, but I knew the world, and I was excited about telling that world because I think it's in American cinema, I think it's an untold, an untapped. It's coming to light now a lot more, working class stories, but in general, I think it's it's still underserved. So
yeah, and I like that you kind of, genre is kind of hard sometimes. I know sometimes we don't like to be pinned into a corner with genre or type or whatnot, but I really felt like the film perfectly straddled the line between comedy and drama because it was so brutally funny. And it was about a group of guys and girls that were all kind of this community around this bar and the life around this bar and group of friends. And so you had the banter and you had the kind of pranking each other. And, there was so much history that was before the movie. So when we come in, I really, truly, as the viewer, felt like you're one of the gang, you're one of the group. And I really just felt like I was so invested. I really was.
I appreciate. I'm glad to hear that. I'm very, very glad to hear that because I think, comedy, and people have said all the cliches about every cliche you've heard about comedy is true. It's hard as hell. It's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I was really intimidated by doing comedy. I've shied away from comedy, I think. And I enjoy making people laugh, and I think I do that kind of naturally. But doing it in a feature film world is a totally different thing than an off the cuff kind of comment here or there, or keeping people either off balance or loose or happy by just making some type of comment on the fly is a lot different than directing a feature comedy, right? So
yeah, now it's like now we're doing the comedy part, this is the line,
right,
we're like, we're at this part, want this to hit. like you said, it's different than.
And that's exactly it, right? And what hits, what doesn't hit. And, again, I got lucky with the cast we had that I was able, we were able to make, we were able to really play and improvise and do things that made it much stronger. But, for me, you mentioned something, and it's funny, when I came to this project a few moons ago, I had always initially saw it as a drama, and I thought it would play best as a drama with some comedy in it. And then we had gone back and forth with Greg, the executive producer and co-writer, and he wanted it as a comedy. And then we kind of met somewhere in the middle. And I was always really honestly concerned about marrying that type of comedy, this unapologetic slice of life, very raw kind of comedy with, this kind of really heartfelt, community aspect to the drama parts of it. And for some people, maybe it's a bridge too far, but I was really interested both in exploring that, but I also knew I felt like that in order for it to hit, the heart had to hit, and really in all comedy, in all stories, you don't have good comedies have great drama and vice versa.
Absolutely.
It's funny. I was just watching another Philly-based show on the weekend, Mayor of Easttown, and I don't know if you've seen the show, but Kate Winslet is doing the Delco accent and whatnot in Philly. And
actually,
anyway,
I haven't. I just saw an ad for it, but yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
So it's a detective thing, and it's a drama for sure. But there's just brilliant comedy, and it's June Smart, I think, plays the mom, and just tremendous comedy. And it, you need both sides of it. So I think I think people with Last Call, if the tone is right in the beginning, and I think with the children, we tried to both set up this generational aspect that was really important to me, but also this kind of crude comedy aspect with what happens in the beginning of the film and the little, and so if you laugh at that, then you're along for the ride, and you take the ride, and I think that the heart hits in the right places, and you enjoy it for what it is. You have some laughs, and that's that. And I don't think the film's taking itself too seriously,
Yeah,
and,
there is a
going
lightness to it. There is a levity to it. And I like what you said about the ratio, because and across the board in any genre, life isn't always funny, but there is so much humor even in darkness. And even like horror. I'm a huge horror buff, and we talked about a lot of horror on the show, and some of the most memorable moments are the laughs right before the gut punch of a horror. It's kind of like riding a roller coaster,
Of course.
And life's like that, and art imitates life. And so I think having that balance and that dynamic is important. But granted, not always, like you said, it's not always easy to catch the lightning in the bottle of what's funny or what plays funny or what hits, and trying to kind of orchestrate that in a synthetic kind of vibe. But I loved how you guys, and I think it fit the bill really well, of having that organic kind of docu style slice of life element. The camera's kind of floating a lot. Did you guys have conversations about that before you started in terms of tonality and feel and look?
Yeah, that was very intentional. And this idea of and with George Gibson at DP, this idea of being kind of claustrophobic, like the idea of this world is very, it was originally titled Crabs in a Bucket. And I don't know if you know the metaphor for that, but it's a socioeconomic metaphor for people pulling kind of people down and not wanting to get ahead. It's okay to get ahead, don't get ahead of me type of mentality. Right. And so
success through pushing others downward,
basically, right? So right. And so this idea of this world very claustrophobic, and Darby Heights, and then especially when Jeremy Piven's character comes back, this kind of world is closing in on him, around him, and he doesn't, so from a visual perspective, it was always really tight, and it, I think it worked without being overly claustrophobic. And then obviously shooting the majority of it in a bar, in a practical bar, we didn't have
a small spot.
Exactly. So we couldn't, we could only do, we were limited with where you can kind of move the camera there. But
Right.
yes, it was intentional. We talked a lot about that and various other, things. But I'm glad you picked up on it, because you said something that for me with this project is if that's what people take away from it, I've succeeded, which is I felt like I was dumped, I felt like I was dumped into the bar, or I felt like I was dumped into the neighborhood, and
You're just like
and that's
plopped
kind of
in with these guys.
yeah, and that was kind of, again, as intentional as we can kind of make that. And it's some might call that plotless at times too. And yeah, we have, a gentrification thing going on, which I think is incredibly important to discuss in America right now. Not necessarily through Last Call. We're a comedy first and foremost, and a dramedy maybe, but so it's not a deep dive into gentrification, right? And this isn't 99 Homes or whatever. It's not like it's not that movie, but I did want to kind of touch on that stuff. And but for me, it's really, I think feeling that. I mean, that's kind of how you want to feel. When you go, it's funny because I just went to a bar last Friday for the first time in a year and a half. And,
Right.
and to meet a friend, and I think there's this that communal aspect of these places where, like Cheers, where everyone knows your name, right? And in our story, in our town, they all do. And so that was a challenge both with the actors, having these guys have lived with each other their whole lives and could finish each other's sentences.
Yeah.
And so this, improv really lent itself to, I think, making that stuff work.
Did you guys do rehearsals to kind of build that? Did any of these guys know each other or work with each other beforehand? So, Jeremy Piven, Taryn Manning, Zach McGowen, Jack McGee, Bruce Dern. I can't believe you got Bruce Dern, by the way. He's like a living legend. He's like, he's in all like the Tarantino movies. Oh my God.
Yeah, tremendous. In fact, he had just come off of Once Upon a Time. That was the film he did right before Last Call.
Right.
All due credit. Good time to give props to my producers, because we cast this ourselves without a casting director. And
get out of here.
Within a month of, basically from when we got greenlit to when we started shooting was about a month or so. And we cast the film in a month's time, and that's which is insane. That's on crazy. Any film. But we had so many characters. We had a lot of, it was a big ensemble.
Yeah, big ensemble piece.
And then to get the level of talent that we got was just insane. But I'm not sure. I think Zach and Taryn, I'm pretty sure they had worked together prior.
Okay.
And maybe Jason Richter may have worked with one of those guys too. He played Seville the cop. But Jeremy and Taryn, I believe, were friends for a long time, but had never worked together. And I think that was intriguing for both of them. I don't believe anyone had worked with Bruce, but I'm pretty certain everyone was dying to work with Bruce. And yeah, Jaimie Kennedy is from Upper Darby, which is kind of, Darby Heights is based on Upper Darby, which is just outside of Philadelphia. And so he knew that kind of claustrophobic world too. And that helped. And obviously also, so we didn't have, and I love rehearsal. I'm a rehearsal geek. Like, I love it. It's low stakes, playing in the sandbox. Like, I could do it. I could watch actors act and play around forever.
Okay.
But we didn't have the luxury of that. And,
time to just be able to do it and run it.
I mean, we just didn't, we were kind of casting up until the final weekend. And then I met Jeremy. I mean, Jeremy and I had talked, and I had shared a bunch of stuff, and I like to share playlists with actors and different things like that. And we discussed a bunch on the phone, but I met him day one on set, literally, like, nice to meet you. And you were shaking hands back then. So we shook hands, and he got right to it. And, just literally brought his A game from the first take. And I was like, oh shit, like, all right,
he really does. It is an ensemble, but he's definitely the protagonist. He carries it.
No doubt.
And he kind of gets dropped into the world. Just to give a little plot, he's been out of town. He's kind of the hot shot. And then his mother, passes away in the very beginning.
Correct.
And then it's like he kind of comes back to this world, and it's like, oh, Mr. Big Shot, and but I can't get over how, I mean, obviously actors act and that's their job, but I do it sometimes, so it's our job. But the ability to have that kind of off camera and on camera just dynamic of like, you can just feel the history with these guys and gals. You can just feel
it was a real concern of mine, and again, someone who and I think there's a point where you can rehearse things to death, and
you can
for sure. And so like for me, I like to just find a little corner, catch a corner of something. Let's play around. Let's find something new. But as it relates to Last Call, I was very concerned because exactly what you said. In the case of Bruce Dern's character Coach and Jack McGee, who plays Jeremy's father, they may have known each other for 60, 70 years, and the other guys and Taryn, they had known each other for 30, 40 years. And so, that's it is difficult to do. And this story, it's because it's set in a bar and these guys kind of ragging on each other all the time and getting on each other, especially Jeremy's character. It's that speed, it's that cadence, it's that talking over one another that can give that is authentic when you walk into a place like Callahan's Pub, and again, credit to the level of talent that we had, and also their improv chops. I mean, Jeremy is he's just razor sharp. He's very quick-witted. He's really smart. He's really engaged with the other players. And so he's one of those guys, I like to call them red light players, but in baseball or any other sport where they just raise the level of play of everyone around them.
Yeah.
Jeremy's one of those guys, 100%. And
unbelievable.
And and I'm very thankful for that. But also, you have Jaimie who these guys do stand up. He's done a ton of comedy. Bruce is obviously the king of improv, and Taryn has comedic chops, and on down the line. And so Sherry O'Terry. And so, I think it
was so refreshing to see her again. I was such a big fan of her on SNL. And
she's another Upper Darby native.
Funny.
So
as the holistic healer. Oh, she's from Philly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She's a Philly chick. She's from Upper
Darby. One of my favorite lines is when she helped Jeremy with she's doing like the chakras and the acupuncture. Right. And it's like he's finally kind of broke through, and then she's like, oh, that'll be $300 or whatever it was.
Yeah. And that's something that she brought to me that morning and was like, Paolo, I'd like to we were talking about this. I want to kind of are you okay with with moving some of this stuff around? And I was like, sure, let's play with it. And I'm a big fan of that anyway, right? And then but this film took it to a different level for me of really giving and I would be silly not to, by the way, but giving my players a lot of like latitude. I think it helps to build trust and this confidence that they have in me, and they don't know me. I'm a nobody, low budget indie filmmaker, and these actors are all established. So it'd be silly for me not to. But also the psychology of it is you get them all. They get so much more invested. And when they're bringing their own ideas to the table, it's what you want ultimately. And then it's just, my job as a director to kind of shepherd it and make sure we don't go too far off the rails and all that kind of stuff. But, and again, Jeremy is another one of those guys where it's like, man, he loved it. And it was just like, you got a genuine laugh out of him. And then we ran with it a couple times and
do a couple takes of that, try that X or Y.
Yeah.
One of my main questions was like, and this is probably an impossible math question for you, but the percentage of like how much improv actually survived and made it to final cut.
Yeah, it's a great question because
it just the whole thing just felt improv to me, and it's probably a testament to you guys and the acting. And
well, I mean, look, there was a good bit of improv, but I would say, I mean, look, the majority of it was on the page in the form. And then I learned a long time ago not to, as a writer, especially as a writer director, not to fall in love with the words and get too precious with the words. I mean, yeah, okay, if there's certain stuff that has to advance the story forward, fine.
You're gonna be like, this guy's got to go to the doctor to meet X or Y. Like that's got to happen, but otherwise,
Yes, Mrs. Smith, you have cancer. You're dying tomorrow. You know, that's important. Whatever.
Got to say that part.
But like, if for one thing, if an actor can't find a truthful place to come at a line or a word, or they could be tripping up on it, you have to have the flexibility to bounce off of it anyway. Or you're just going to be stuck with your words because you love them so much, and your scene's going to be flat. Which then no one cares about your words on the page. They care about whether or not the actor is believable on the screen.
The final product on screen. Yeah.
And but this story lent itself to a lot of improv. Like we had some stuff that was funny and that worked. And then if they came up with something funnier or something better, or it was all like lathered up more, then let's rock and roll, because that's ultimately, we need to let's make sure these few beats happen in the scene, and everything else around that we can, if you need to go this way to get to it, I'm fine, So to answer your question though, a good bit was improvised. Jaimie would improvise a ton, and oftentimes he would just, give me one more time. Okay, I'll give you one more. Let me do one thing. And it would be, he would have the whole set in stitches, and then, and he would be like, he's hilarious. And he'd be like, Paolo, we can't use that, right? I'm like, yeah, no, there's no way we're gonna be able to use that.
There's no way we're gonna get away with that or whatever.
But you know what? Like a handful of those times did make it in. And like,
right. So it's good you went for it,
Yeah, it just worked out. I mean, one of the lines I think might be one of the lines in the film, the 3 stain policy when he's bouncing.
Oh man, yeah, when he's bouncing out front.
That's all Jaimie. I mean, it just happened to be this dude. One of our extras had a bunch of stains on his shirt, I think, and he ran with it. And and we got into,
he had 4 stains.
yeah, right. You can't get in. And so, when we got into the editing bay, it was just it kept just staying in. Like people like, you can't lose it. People just kept laughing at it, and so I mean, again, it goes back to the level of talent. I don't think I could have been nearly as assured as I was on the day if I didn't have that level of talent. Or maybe I could, I don't know, but I felt really confident and comfortable doing it because of who I was playing with,
Yeah. Right.
And they say casting is 90%. And in my case, I believe it is,
Yeah, I get it. I mean, because the freedom to be able to have that trust, like you said before, and then as the director to kind of know, like you said, when to rein it in, or like, okay, this doesn't feel natural or whatnot.
Right.
But if the material you're getting is so strong and the banter is happening and the lightning in the bottle is happening, you can kind of just be like, all right, that was great.
Yep.
Wow.
I mean,
it really felt it.
Some of these scenes, especially in the bar, were really just set up to be, it was just that, is to build this camaraderie, to feel like you're in it, to feel like these guys don't leave these bar stools or whatever. And and so, I honestly, as good as you could have the best actors in the world, and what's on the page is still going to feel rigid. At some point, you lather them up, and then you let them go, and you wind them up, you let them go, and especially in that kind of environment, a couple of those scenes where the booze is flowing freely, and so are so is the banter and the jokes. It's really the only way I feel to do it, which doesn't feel, otherwise it feels canned, and you could just tell, even with great actors, which I had, you could just tell if it feels canned a little bit versus versus this kind of an authenticity to those scenes is really what I was going for, and thankfully we had 2 cameras too, which helped, so I could get, we didn't miss some of that stuff, with the improv, especially. At least we had 2 angles on it, usually at all times, so which helped.
Right. So one camera, usually one camera's catching something,
a reaction to whoever, especially if it was, I mean, most scenes, very rare. We didn't have very many scenes with just 2 players, or even one. It was a lot of ensemble,
a lot of group.
So what I liked about that though was I love the 2-shot, man. I fucking love it, and I don't think, especially, I don't think American filmmakers use it enough.
I know, we're really seeing a departure from the 2-shot. It's all tight, cut.
Yeah. Yeah, and we didn't do. I mean, first of all, I couldn't. We didn't. We just had too much to get, and
Yeah.
from a practical, low budget indie filmmaking perspective, we had to live a little bit wider anyway in times.
Mhm.
But also, the beauty of a two shot is there's no hiding in a two shot. There's no hiding any of the acting in a two shot. And when you have players like Jeremy and Taryn and Zach and Bruce and Jack and everyone, and Kathy Moriarty, we didn't mention her,
Amazing.
you can do that. But also some of these guys have a little bit of physicality to them, and some of that comedy, you need to be able to do this, you need to be able to see the hands and the arms,
Pull
and
back a
torso.
little and get the full body.
Bit.
Yeah.
A little bit, so it was kind of difficult again to do in a bar setting, but I tried to be conscious of that as well, because I don't know, and to me it's also it's just a little more interesting. I mean, yeah, I could have, and I probably bone myself a little bit in coverage, of course, but there's nothing that is more boring than just the basically the master and the over the shoulder and then the close up. It's just what's going to happen. Your brains are ready. Yeah. And it's just kind of, even if the scene's great, it's just boring visually,
Yeah. So. No, and when you get wider, I feel like it plays more like a play. And with such an ensemble, it really felt like it was kind of, it could get almost, because this could be a play, and about a town and our town or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the camera really stayed. It felt very verite to me and very docu, which I think really, really served it.
Yeah.
It gave it that kind of realistic look into, which is the thing is what you guys are really going for.
100%. I mean, I had said too, to from production design, from George and my DP on down, but production design and everything, like, this isn't, this is I want this to look gritty. Like, I want it to look real. I don't want this to look, it's not a glossy town. It's not a glossy story. And, comedies by and large, especially studio comedies, they're the ugliest. They're the worst. They're just boring to look at usually. And people make great comedies, but in the world of visual cinematic storytelling, they tend to be the least exciting, right? They're just really always super well lit and bright, and just kind of everything's in focus and boring. It's kind of boring. And for us, it was so important that the neighborhood was another character in this, and really part of.
I love that.
And really part of the with part of the tale. And so we wanted to kind of show that in its kind of beautiful dirtiness, in a way.
Oh, I love that.
Because I think, like, towns like this, and again, growing up where I grew up, I knew it too. These towns are very proud, right? They're tired, they're worn, they're beat down, but they're very proud. They don't necessarily, and I think one of the characters mentions it at one point. They're what if we didn't want to go anywhere, or something? He says something to that effect, and it to me was really important because maybe they have nowhere else to go, but they're kind of they're happy where they're at too, in a way. The neighborhood could use a little polish, a little cleanup, but it's theirs, and I think there's something to be said for that, especially
so much history to draw on,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So. And for me to I'm actually drinking out of my my Delaware mug here.
Oh, I love it.
You get that kind of brick look with the striped awnings. And like you said, there is that kind of grit to everything. I don't want to say necessarily that it's just dirty, but there is this kind of proud, kind of rough edge, which you touched on. And Wilmington is just half an hour south of Philly on the 95.
Right.
So I grew up there, and I was always going up to Philly for field trips and just to go up there. And so to me, it just really hit home. And, I grew up kind of going in and out of, my dad was always going to this, it's called the Giuseppe Verdi Sons of Italy, like Italian club. Yeah. And you kind of go down the stoop and you go down these steps. And I just felt like, oh man, I've been in so many of these places that they haven't changed their design in, 40, 50 years or whatever.
Yeah. At least, if not longer. In our case, the bar that we used, in the script, ironically, it was a 100-year-old pub that had been in their family for century, for the century and through generations. And the pub we used, Wojciech's in Bayonne, New Jersey, was Polish American and was in the same family for 100 years, as as fate would have it. And you can't just you can't you first of all, on our project, you can't, that production value is tremendous, but you can there's a history there. There's layers of dirt that just won't go away, no matter what.
Sedimentary layers.
Exactly right. So yeah, to me, that was a stroke of luck, and it was really important once we found that location. And Janet, God rest her soul, she had passed with COVID, unfortunately.
Oh no.
Yeah, right before the film premiered. But she was, I know, she was super generous and just really welcoming. For me, she was, it was nice because she was there and like a really grounding. It was a reminder to me every day that I was making this film for the working class, and which was a really nice little, if I needed just to be grounded, in the morning or whatever, I would see her just, getting a cup of coffee or something. And it was just a nice kind of quick balance for me,
Center your chi on the working class.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, we got really lucky. But yeah, to your point, I mean, these people in our story anyway, they're well aware of their lot in life. They're well aware where they are. It was really important for me for them to be kind of middle-aged as well, and very much so set in their ways. They're not 20 or even 30, they're in their mid 40s or more. And for a lot of them, their dreams have long been extinguished, and then what do you do when something comes in and threatens your way of life? You have maybe nowhere to go. This gentrification thing is a really worthy discussion on a broader sense, because the town we were shooting in Bayonne in North Jersey, going through exactly what we were kind of doing with our casino thread, and what Jeremy was coming back to ultimately do in the neighborhood. And there was directly across, catty corner from where we were shooting was this new, it wasn't a casino, but it was a new construction. And that town is going through all of that, which was another kind of life imitating art, imitating life situation, and but it's an interesting conversation. How do you hold on to what makes neighborhoods unique and special while also progressing them,
right?
To keep up,
finding that balance,
without also kind of leaving those people behind, leaving them literally in the dust. So,
it's like if you don't embrace the new hot thing that generates income, and to get the pipeline into the town, but then it's like what's selling out, what's killing the essence, the spark. Like, where do you ride that balance?
Yeah.
And I feel like your film really, like you said, you're not trying to kind of like go deep, but I feel like you are in a way kind of posing the question of, and I love how Jeremy Piven goes through all the motions of getting the signatures, and he's all about the casino, and then he's like, all right, this is just gonna kill the town or whatever.
Yeah, the neighborhood, part of showing some of that, the whole petition, getting the signatures was showing a little bit of the neighborhood, just a little bit of these people, because again, it was really important for me, that this neighborhood is it's not a ghetto by any means. It is just, it's down on its luck, and it got kicked a couple of times while it was down. But these people are strong. They're going to get back up. It's just a matter of like, kind of sorting it out. And yeah, they have their issues just like everyone else does. Some people have said since, you made they look so trashy, and I don't necessarily feel that way. I feel like they're living very much so day to day, which I think a lot of people, especially now, are. And people do regardless of socioeconomic kind of status. I know plenty of much wealthier people in neighborhoods than Darby Heights that do the same quote unquote trashy things that our characters do, so right. I don't necessarily see it that way at all, really, but anyway.
No, and I mean, I'm sure you guys weren't anticipating the pandemic when you were prepping and shooting.
No, in fact, we shot we shot in the fall of 19, and then we had to go and pick up some stuff in the spring. And I had
as the hammer was coming down.
I mean, so and it was, we were set up to shoot the first full week in March of last year of 2020. And I was kind of pushing the producers and the executive producers, can we wait until, another month and a half until like all the foliage is fully formed, fully grown in, because in the Northeast, as I'm sure you remember, we lose the leaves in the wintertime in the trees and things like that. But we couldn't. And so it was we were shooting March 9th, 10th, and 11th, and we wrapped on the 12th. And we were in Bayonne, which is just outside of New York City. And, the world is, New Rochelle had already closed down, and the world was literally crumbling around us. I mean, when I say we got it in by the skin of our teeth, we just got it in, and then we cut remotely and, all the other stuff. But I feel very fortunate because obviously we got it in the can, and I have some friends that weren't as fortunate. So,
yeah. It was a really hard time for film and for bars
and for bars. Yeah. And Jeremy had said this a couple times during his press junket for this. And I think it's a really important point that again, with art imitating life, like this is an ode to the mom and pop shops, to the bars and really the bodegas and the people who, it was already going to be a love letter to them prior to the pandemic, but now it's even more poignant and topical because they're the ones that need need all the support that we can give them. So and then to take that a step further, indie films like is its own little mom and pop shop, right? So it's a whole separate, it's
like a Russian doll of layers of the mom and pop.
Exactly. But I it's funny how many people have reached out and has, oh my God, it reminds me of my favorite, watering hole
spot,
or spot, just a place, and I think over this last year, especially, we've really come to realize and appreciate how important those communal gathering spots are in our lives,
Huge.
And it's just really important. I mean, man, like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, but literally just went to my corner bar to meet someone last Friday, and was just like, it's a place I've been going to for, half of my life. But, I saw the bartender who is the owner, and just like, it was really emotional, man. And like, he's still not open yet, by the way. It's like outside, it's not like you can't just,
right.
At least here, you can't sit at the bar yet, but still just the fact that they're open and kind of like with, a decent kind of outdoor crowd and kind of doing business was really emotional. So I think, I think hopefully for that, it'll be, it remains topical,
I know. I just met up with some friends a week ago. It was 4 of us with me, and again, outside, and it wasn't a bar, but it's a restaurant that I've been going to. That's just around the corner from me. Hadn't been there in, year and plus.
Yeah.
And she remembered like what we wanted. The waitress like remembered our orders and was like, and we were like, oh my God, we're regulars. This is crazy. She remembers what we wanted. And it was just such a beautiful, warm glow feeling in our hearts. And we couldn't shut up about it. We were like, oh my God, we're regulars. I've never been really a regular anywhere. I guess we made it, because she remembered what we wanted, and like the coffee black and like the whole thing. We did a brunch. And it's just such a, it feels like maybe it was a small thing, but it's actually a really big thing when you connect and have that touchstone with people in your community. And we've all been stuck inside and hiding and with our masks on and waiting to hear what the CDC is going to tell us when we can go back out, blah, blah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think at the end of the day, right, it's this human need to be loved and this interaction, and we all just want to be loved a little bit. And I think, for a lot of people, this last year was really tough with isolation and separation and just not, being able to go outside of maybe your own, immediate family or whatever it is. And whatever that is not just bars, obviously. Right. I mean, we would have dinner either with my mom or my mother-in-law pretty much every Sunday, like I've been doing since I was, boy, you know, and extended family and big Italian Sunday dinners and stuff. You know, my mom is in her, you know, in her late 80s and couldn't see her grandchildren couldn't hug her grandchildren for a year. And like, you know, so, I mean, so it's not just right. You know, so our bar is a metaphor for all of that, but I think there is a real, I think it's going to be a fun summer, honestly. I think, you know, we're obviously on the rebound and I think if people continue to be smart, I think it's, you know, I think, you know, we all see, but really how important that all that is. But again, also, you know, like in our story, the bodega, like how important those spots are to our daily lives that sometimes you take for granted, that I think now people will very much less take for granted. A certain place because they like the way their coffee is made, or they put just the amount of cream in it, or you know, whatever
exactly
it is,
how you love it.
Way.
Yeah,
exactly. And you know, that the big you know, that you can get the same kind of stuff or the same product maybe at a larger retailer or chain, but you're not going to get that level of specificity. And I think that's really what makes neighborhoods like Darby Heights and Last Call fun and unique, you know?
Yeah. Oh man, that comes across so well. All right, Paulo, well, walk us through kind of the independent movie process. I know every movie's different and, you know, there's no rules, indie or not, but in terms of, you know, this seems so personal to you, and I think it really comes across. You weren't, so it was a story. Can you walk us through kind of the genesis of this?
Of Last Call? Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I was brought, actually, this project, Greg Lingo, who is the executive producer, wrote a first draft of Last Call. And I was brought to the project through a mutual friend, a filmmaking colleague of mine, Rich Hoffman, who I made my very first feature with a few moons back. And he said, I have this project. I want you to meet this guy. I have this script. I think you might like it. And so, you know, I read it and you know, like all scripts, especially in early stages, it needed work. But there was an authenticity to it. And there was a, you know, there was something that kept, you know, I knew this world, you know, I knew it. And it turns out that Greg grew up in Upper Darby, famous for many things, but not the least of which Tower Theater, infamous, you know, rock venue, David Bowie, whatever. But Dolph Lundgren, who's going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or just did. And
Dolph
anyway,
Lundgren, nice.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Upper Darby has a lot of exports, but so he had grown up in this neighborhood, and so this, you know, Greg had comes from a engineering background and real estate, so nothing at all really in the arts and in filmmaking, storytelling, and screenwriting. But he had grown up in this neighborhood, and he had, you know, this idea of wanting to tell this story about a group of guys and these bonds that you know, these ties that bind you, right? And as it turns out, where I grew up in Overbrook in West Philadelphia to Upper Darby, it's separated by Cobb's Creek, and it's a golf course and a creek, and that's it. And so while his neighborhood was predominantly, I say, Irish American and Asian American, and mine, like I said, was Italian and Jewish and African American, it was basically the same socioeconomic status, and he was outside the city limits, but basically the same peoples, you know. And so we were able to, and to this day, have this very straightforward way of talking to each other that I think you can really, I don't say only get, but you definitely get from having similar kind of backgrounds, and we could go right there. And that was obviously very helpful. But so anyway, that was kind of the origins of it. And then you know, he kind of handed it over to me. I did a bunch of rewrites on it, kind of passed it back and forth. He was, you know, pretty actively involved in in certainly shaping the story and in various other parts of the script. But he wasn't a filmmaker, so it wasn't necessarily high priority for him to actually make it in a film. So we kind of bounced around, kind of, took it, we went back and forth for years on it. And, I kind of put it down, made a couple other projects, went back to it. And then, I guess it was the spring of 19, sorry. Spring of 19, I had said, I've been working with DJ on a feature I'm doing in Italy and a couple other projects. He's a producing partner of mine. And he had said, I have a couple guys up in New York that are putting out really high quality, low budget indies in this budget level. Do you have anything else, that might work? And I said, I have this project, and I went back to Greg and I said, look, Greg, I got these guys out of New York that can kind of do it on our budget level. You want to, what do you think? And so we met and we kind of instantly all hit it off, which I think is really important.
Right.
Obviously, I had never worked with those guys, with Rob Simmons and Ante Novakovic up in New York. I had never worked with them. DJ had, but not maybe with Rob, I'm not sure. But anyway, we kind of hit it off. I think the sensibilities lined up, and Greg liked them most importantly and felt confident, and away we went. Now, when we did that was, I guess, summer, say, before we started shooting. It was with this idea that it would mostly be like local and regional talent, which I was totally fine with. I mean, I was going to cast this thing from my phone with mostly Philly and New York talent. And I would have been very happy with that. And, but again, the testament to kind of just building your team out. I mentioned this in, I think, the No Film School, really important of like building your team out. Right. And so, I trust DJ as a producing partner of mine. He trusts Rob trusts Ante, and you start to do that. Right. And then Rob says, what do you think about Taryn Manning? I love Taryn Manning. Oh, I worked with her on a project a year or so, or a couple of years ago. We can get her. I think we can get her. Let's get her the script. And I really was intrigued with the idea of Taryn, kind of playing against type, and kind of playing the sweet girl for once, Anyway,
yeah, that's great.
She read it, liked it, loved it, whatever, and came on board. And for me, man, I can't thank her enough, because now it's a project with a name attached. And
I think you can start to build more momentum that way.
Exactly right. And so from there, DJ had worked with Bruce Dern a couple of years back and went to him. And a funny little anecdote about Bruce Dern real quick, if we have a moment. But
I love it.
So Bruce is reading the script, and we'll see, whatever. And my phone rings Sunday night late, and I look down, I'm talking to my wife, we're on the couch, whatever. She's like, I'm pretty sure this is Bruce Dern. I should probably answer this call, So he's like, Paolo. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, Bruce Dern. Hi, Mr. Dern.
That's a really good impression, by the way.
He says, we got to talk about the last scene in the film. And without giving out the last scene, there's a little kind of, there's something to stick around for in the end credits. Right. And, and then and look, I don't really get nervous much, but my heart is in my throat. I'm like,
oh my God, how can you not?
And I know. And there's this like pregnant pause. And then all of a sudden he's like, I fucking love it. Blah, 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 blah. It's like The Hangover for adults. And he's going on and on. 2 hours later, I get off the phone. I kid you not, I still have him. I have notes. I have notes on, of course he'd worked with, obviously he had just worked with Tarantino, but he had worked with Kazan and Hitchcock. Just
oh my
the
God.
Greats.
Yeah, he's
just
a legend.
Insane. So anyway, he's on board. And then from there, the wind was at our backs. And then it became,
right.
It became Jaimie was from the neighborhood, had known Greg. I think they had grown up together. So he was always interested. And then that just became easier for him to jump on board. And then it just became, who else wants to play with these guys, And look, I think you get lucky, but you also do the work. And that's a testament to producers and building your crew out. And And anyway, so yeah, and that was literally up into like through the weekend of when we were going to start to shoot the film. We were still casting and just kind of
Wow.
But never in my wildest dreams did I think, never in my wildest dreams did I think we were going to have that level of talent. And what a blessing, so kind of away we went. And yeah,
That's so
shot
cool.
it, and we posted during the pandemic, and which was all things considered a breeze compared to what a lot of other people went through. So I'm not complaining about it, but it presented its own challenges, obviously. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then IFC, and couldn't have found a better home than them. And again, this project has just consistently punched above, kind of like The Neighborhood in a lot of ways, which is kind of a little poetic justice. But
Yeah.
it's just consistently punched above its weight. And that just goes to show, man, like you never know. You just never know. You never know what an actor is going to gravitate towards. You never know what a distributor is going to gravitate towards. Just tell your story as honestly as you can and kind of see where the chips fall. And
I love that.
We got it worked out for this project, I think.
It really did. It really did. Man, yeah. Well, congrats to you and team on Last Call. I loved it. It made me so nostalgic of Philly and Wilmington and just being in bars again. But I love what you said, how it's kind of the metaphor for life in general. And I really think you guys touched on so many awesome things, and it deserves a few looks because just the camaraderie and the bonding between everybody just really was really powerful. And yeah, you really feel like you're part of the gang after the movie,
Yeah.
I'm almost like, now I want to see these guys again. Is there a last call? Last call too?
Last call too. Yeah.
Back in the habit.
You ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here. It's just the after party. Yeah.
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 After hours.
It's
That's
funny.
hilarious.
I do think it would make it could make a good, I mean, there's always been plenty of bar shows, but I do think it could make a good, there could be a series.
I really think that you might have touched on something.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. We'll see.
For sure.
We'll see.
Well, what's next for you? I know you said you were working on a project in Italy. What's next for Paolo Pilladi?
Yeah. So, God willing, knock on wood.
Here, I'll knock too.
Italy.
There.
Yeah, thank you. God willing, we head to Italy this summer, late summer, early fall, for a feature film that I wrote called The Winemaker's Son, which is a whimsical folk tale about a little boy who drinks homemade wine on his grandmother's deathbed and gets special powers. And as an adult, he lives in America and he's estranged from his father, and he's an illustrator. And he decides to, he heads back to his hometown in rural Italy for, a little vacation and a little, reconnection of sorts. And his father falls ill, and ultimately he creates this illustrated roadmap to the afterlife to help his father pass on, because his father, unlike his grandmother, is very much so afraid of death. And so it's very much so steeped in Italian, like traditional Italian storytelling, which with a bit of that kind of the comedy only in the way that I hope I could do it like them, but in the way that only Italians can do, I feel like, and
the Italian banter.
Yeah, and just this kind of charming, outlook on life, and just kind of really appreciating, slowing things down, and the character in that Pepe needs to kind of, he lives in big city America, and he needs to kind of slow his life down,
slow his roll a little.
Yeah, and so ironically, where we're shooting is a certified slow city, which I don't know if you're familiar with any of that. But there's this whole slow food movement that's based in.
There's like a slow academy that like deems and baptizes places.
Yeah.
Slow.
And so it's kind of like, kind of similar like farm to table, and things like that in America. In Italy, it's called, it's 0 kilometer basically, but everything has to be within a certain proximity of your dish to be considered a slow city.
Oh, wow.
And which is, yeah, it's really amazing and really brilliant. And honestly, the way Italians have been living for the most part for centuries, right? And
Right.
you know, if you live at the coast, you eat seafood. If you live in the mountains, you eat, you know, meat and that kind of thing. But yeah, this little tiny, you know, 150 person town in
Wow.
on the border of, you know, medieval town on the border of Lazio and Umbria, which is another stroke of just kind of luck. Like this is you know, kind of life imitating art. But I'm really excited about that project too. It's a passion project as well. I wrote it after my father passed away about 10-12 years ago, and you know, we had gone out a couple times, and I don't want to put carts before horses, but it's looking good for us to that'll be the follow-up project. It'll be the follow-up project no matter what, but it looks pretty good for us, you know, if everything kind of lines up, and pandemic kind of does
Mellows out.
it mellows out, especially in Europe.
Yeah.
You know, we should be there before the fall ends for sure. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a cool little project. I'm excited about it.
That's incredible. Well, we will certainly be keeping tabs on you, sir.
Thank you.
And was there anything else you wanted to say about growing up in Philly, or, you know, your path as a filmmaker? What was there a moment where you were like, I want to be a filmmaker, or was it kind of a slow burn?
Yeah, I would say mostly a slow burn. You know,
Okay.
I think I do a couple of things that relate to Philly and Overbrook and my upbringing and the immigrant enclave that I was talking about.
Right.
I was always like, from a very young age, I always loved, I had old neighbors all around me, and yeah, I would play with my friends and stuff, but I loved listening to them tell stories. I loved it. And even to the point of trying to like understand their like broken English and like making up new words, and you know, and then just how stories kind of just grew and tall tale-ish, you know, and
Urban. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
And so I was always like, I just always loved I always loved that. So I think my love of storytelling started at a very, very young age. And then, you know, I went to Catholic school, um which wasn't like necessarily the you know, this hotbed for the arts and music and film and whatnot. But I will say, in high school, um you know, I had an English teacher, Sister Ave, who was just always like, keep writing, man, you're really good at it, kind of thing. And
Keep
that
at
always
it.
stuck with me. And I bought I got a high eight, a Sony high eight camcorder when I was in like 9th or 10th grade for my birthday. And I would just run around and shoot literally like my friends, and then it just grab people off the street and just make movies up on the fly, and then cut
Awesome.
them like in the camera or whatever, and
Right.
take it to school and be like, listen, I'll do the history, I'll do the essay, but let me go and
Let me
shoot
film it.
and I'll go shoot a war reenactment too with my friends, and then we would show it in the class. And so they were kind of cool with that stuff. And so I guess that really, you know, I guess, but I think it's more of a love of storytelling than anything else, and just kind of that, you know, that kind of generational passing down of stories has always fascinated me, and always, you know, always interested me. So
That's
you know,
beautiful.
yeah.
All right.
Well, I
Well,
have Philly, I think, for that.
yeah. Eagles fan?
Yes, of course.
Yes, me too. Huge.
Yes.
Still pumped about that win a few years ago.
Yeah.
Still
I'm an
buzzing.
Eagles fan. We are kind of a mess right now, but I think a little beautiful
Yes.
mess. And you know, we'll see. I think you know, hope springs eternal in May, as it relates to football seasons, right? So, you know,
Yeah.
it seems like they had a good draft. So, you know, we'll kind of
Yeah.
I'm willing to give them a little bit of
Chin up.
a little bit of leeway. We'll see. I think the kid, I think the kid they drafted, and I think the Hurts, the quarter, I think he's going to be fine. So, you know, winners win, you know, and so I think, and I think he's a winner, and I think, so I think long term he'll be fine. Hopefully it'll be here and in short order, but yeah, we'll see.
We shall see in a few months.
Yeah.
All right, Paulo. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story and your film. Everyone has to go out, check out Last Call. Amazing work. I can't wait to watch it again already. And I really appreciate all you've shared. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Andy, man. It was a pleasure. It was a lot
All
of
right,
fun.
sir. Take care.
All right. See you soon. All right. Bye-bye.